Expert historians claim that the Secret Doctrine was one of the main board books of Einstein and even Adolf Hitler. This book was far ahead of its time in the knowledge of physics because many of the scientific discoveries it describes were made decades after it was written. And including Einstein himself successfully used this knowledge in his work, so we recommend listening to this book, which allowed dozens of breakthrough discoveries in many areas of human knowledge. And how many more are to come? Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back and we'll begin. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. The Secret Doctrine. Part 2. An archaic manuscript, a collection of palm leaves made impermeable to water, fire, and air by some specific and unknown process, is before the writer's eye. On the first page is an immaculate white disc within a dull black ground. On the following page, the same disc, but with a central point. The first, the student knows, represents cosmos in eternity, before the reawakening of still slumbering energy, the emanation of the world in later systems. The point in the hitherto immaculate disk, space and eternity in pralaya, denotes the dawn of differentiation. It is the point in the mundane egg, the germ within it which will become the universe, the all. The boundless periodical cosmos, a germ which is latent and active, periodically and by turns. The one circle is divine unity, from which all proceeds, whither all returns. Its circumference a forcibly limited symbol, in view of the limitation of the human mind, indicates the abstract, ever-incognizable presence, and its plane, the universal soul, although the two are one. Only, the face of the disc being white, and the surrounding ground black, clearly shows that its plane is the soul knowledge, dim and hazy though it still is, that is attainable by man. It is on this plane that the mandanteric manifestations begin, for it is in this soul that slumbers, during the pralaya, the divine thought, wherein lies concealed the plan of every future cosmogony and theogony. It is the one life, eternal, invisible, yet omnipresent, without beginning or end, yet periodical in its regular manifestations, between which periods reigns the dark mystery of non-being, unconscious, yet absolute consciousness, unrealizable, yet the one self-existing reality, truly, a chaos to the sense, a cosmos to the reason. Its one absolute attribute, which is itself eternal, ceaseless motion, is called in esoteric parlance the great breath, which is the perpetual motion of the universe, in the sense of limitless, ever-present space. That which is motionless cannot be divine. But then there is nothing in fact and reality absolutely motionless within the universal soul. Almost 5 centuries Leucippus, the instructor of Democritus, maintained that space was eternally filled with atoms actuated by a ceaseless motion, which, in due course of time, as they aggregated, generated rotatory motion, through mutual collisions producing lateral movements. Epicurus and Lucretius taught the same doctrine, adding however to the lateral motion of the atoms the idea of affinity, and occult teaching. From the beginning of man's inheritance, from the first appearance of the architects of the globe he lives on, the unrevealed deity was recognized and considered under its only philosophical aspect, universal motion, the thrill of the creative breath in nature. Occultism sums up the one existence thus. Deity is an arcane, living or moving fire, and the eternal witnesses to this unseen presence are light, heat, moisture, this trinity including, and being the cause of, every phenomenon in nature. Intracosmic motion is eternal and ceaseless, cosmic motion the visible, or that which is subject to perception, is finite and periodical. As an eternal abstraction it is the ever-present, as a manifestation, it is finite both in the coming direction and the opposite, the two being the alpha and omega of successive reconstructions. cosmos. The noumenon has naught to do with the causal relations of the phenomenal world. It is only with reference to the intracosmic soul, the ideal cosmos in the immutable divine thought, that we may say, it never had a beginning, nor will it have an end. With regard to its body or cosmic organization, though it cannot be said that it had a first, or will ever have a last construction, yet at each new Manvantara, its organization may be regarded as the first and the last of its kind, as it evolves every time on a higher plane. A few years ago only, it was stated that the esoteric doctrine, like Buddhism and Brahmanism, and even Kabbalism, teaches that the one infinite and unknown essence exists from all eternity, and in regular and harmonious successions is either passive or active. In the poetical phraseology of Manu, these conditions are called the days and the nights of Brahma. The latter is either awake or asleep. The Svabhavikas, or philosophers of the oldest school of Buddhism, which still exists in Nepal, speculate only upon the active condition of this essence, which they call Svabhavit, and deem it foolish to theorize upon the abstract and unknowable power in its passive condition. Hence they are called atheists by both Christian theologians and modern scientists, for neither of the two are able to understand the profound logic of their philosophy. The former will allow of no other God than the personified secondary powers which have worked out the visible universe, and which becomes with them the anthropomorphic God of the Christians, the male Jehovah, roaring amid thunder and lightning. In its turn, rationalistic science greets the Buddhists and the Svabhavikas as the positivists of the archaic ages. If we take a one-sided view of the philosophy of the latter, our materialists may be right in their own way. The Buddhists maintain that there is no creator, but an infinitude of creative powers, which collectively form the one eternal substance, the essence of which is inscrutable, hence not a subject for speculation for any true philosopher. Socrates invariably refused to argue upon the mystery of universal being, yet no one would ever have thought of charging him with atheism, except those who were bent upon his destruction. Upon inaugurating an active period, says the Secret Doctrine, an expansion of this divine essence from without inwardly, and from within outwardly, occurs in obedience to eternal and immutable law, and the phenomenal or visible universe is the ultimate result of the long chain of cosmical forces thus progressively set in motion. In like manner, when the passive condition is resumed, a contraction of the divine essence takes place, and the previous work of creation is gradually and progressively undone. The visible universe becomes disintegrated, its material dispersed, and darkness, solitary and alone, broods once more over the face of the deep. To use a metaphor from the secret books, which will convey the idea still more clearly, an outbreathing of the unknown essence produces the world, and an inhalation causes it to disappear. This process has been going on from all eternity, and our present universe is but one of an infinite series, which had no beginning, and will have no end. This passage will be explained, as far as it is possible, in the present work. Though it contains nothing new to the Orientalist, as it now stands, its esoteric interpretation may contain a good deal which has hitherto remained entirely unknown to the Western student. The first illustration is a plain disc, circle. The second, in the archaic symbol, shows a disc with a point in it, circle with dot. The first differentiation in the periodical manifestations of the ever-eternal nature, sexless and infinite, a deity in that or potential space within abstract space. In its third stage, the point is transformed into a diameter, circle with line. It now symbolizes a divine immaculate Mother Nature within the all-embracing absolute infinitude. When the horizontal diameter is crossed by a vertical one, circle with cross, it becomes the mundane cross. Humanity has reached its third root trace. It is the sign for the origin of human life. When the circumference disappears and leaves only the cross, it is a sign that the fall of man into matter is accomplished, and the fourth race begins. The cross within a circle symbolizes pure pantheism. When the cross is left uninscribed, it becomes phallic. It had the same and yet other meanings as a tau inscribed within a circle with lines, tau, or as a Thor's hammer, the so-called Jaina cross, or svastika, within a circle with swastika. By the third symbol, the circle divided in two by a horizontal diameter was meant the first manifestation of creative nature, still passive, because feminine. The first shadowy perception of man connected with procreation is feminine, because man knows his mother more than his father. Hence female deities were more sacred than male. Nature is therefore feminine and, to a degree, objective and tangible, and the spirit principle which fructifies it is concealed. By adding to the horizontal line in the circle a perpendicular, the page 035 tau was formed, T, the oldest form of the letter. It was the glyph of the third root race to the day of its symbolical fall, i.e. when the separation of sexes by natural evolution took place, when the figure became circle with vertical line, or sexless life modified, or separated a double glyph or symbol. With the sub-races of our fifth race, it became in symbology the sacre, and in Hebrew kava, of the first formed races. Then it changed into the Egyptian emblem of life, Ankh, and still later into the sign of Venus, female symbol. Then comes the svastika, Thor's hammer, now the Hermetic cross, entirely separated from its circle, thus becoming purely phallic. The esoteric symbol of Kali Yuga is the five-pointed star reversed, with its 2 points, horns, turned heavenward, thus five-pointed star, the sign of human sorcery, a position every occultist will recognize as one of the left hand and used in ceremonial magic. It is hoped that during the perusal of this work, the erroneous ideas of the public in general with regard to pantheism will be modified. It is wrong and unjust to regard the Buddhists and Advaitin occultists as atheists. If not all of them philosophers, they are, at any rate, all logicians, their objections and arguments being based on strict reasoning. Indeed, if the Parabrahman of the Hindus may be taken as a representative of the hidden and nameless deities of other nations, this absolute principle will be found to be the prototype from which all the others were copied. Parabrahman is not God, because it is not a god. It is that which is supreme, and not supreme, Paravara. It is supreme as cause, not supreme as effect. Parabrahman is simply, as a secondless reality, the all-inclusive cosmos, or rather the infinite cosmic space in the highest spiritual sense, of course. Brahman, neuter, being the unchanging, pure, free, undecaying supreme root, the one true existence, Paramarthika, and the absolute Chit and Chaitanya, intelligence, consciousness, cannot be a cognizer, for that can have no subject of cognition. Can the flame be called the essence of fire? This essence is the life and light of the universe. The visible fire and flame are destruction, death, and evil. Fire and flame destroy the body of an Arat, their essence makes him immortal. The knowledge of the Absolute Spirit, like the effulgence page 036 of the sun, or like heat and fire, is naught else than the Absolute Essence itself, says Shankaracharya. It is the spirit of the fire, not fire itself. Therefore, the attributes of the latter, heat, or flame, are not the attributes of the spirit, but of that of which that spirit is the unconscious cause. Is not the above sentence the true keynote of later Rosicrucian philosophy? Parabrahman is, in short, the collective aggregate of cosmos in its infinity and eternity, the that and this to which distributive aggregates cannot be applied. In the beginning this was the self, one only. And the great Shankaracharya explains that this refers to the universe, Jagat. The words, in the beginning, meaning before the reproduction of the phenomenal universe. Therefore, when the pantheists echo the Upanishads, which state, as in the Secret Doctrine, that this cannot create, they do not deny a creator, or rather a collective aggregate of creators. They simply refuse, very logically, to attribute creation and especially formation something finite to an infinite principle. With them, Parabrahman is a passive because an absolute cause, the unconditioned mukta. It is only limited omniscience and omnipotence that are refused to the latter, because these are still attributes, reflected in man's perceptions, and because Parabrahman, being the supreme all, the ever-invisible spirit and soul of nature, changeless and eternal, can have no attributes. The term absoluteness very naturally precluding any idea of the finite or conditioned from being connected with it. And if the Vedantins postulate attributes as belonging simply to its emanation, calling it Ishvara plus Maya, and avidya, agnosticism and nescience rather than ignorance, it is difficult to find any atheism in this conception. Since there can be neither two infinites, nor two absolutes in a universe supposed to be boundless, this self-existence can hardly be conceived of as creating personally. To the senses, and in the perceptions of finite beings, that is non-being, in the sense that it is the one beingness. For, in this all lies concealed its co-eternal and coeval emanation page 037 or inherent radiation, which, becoming periodically Brahma, the male-female potency, expands itself into the manifested universe. Narayana moving on the abstract waters of space is transformed into the waters of concrete substance moved by him, who now becomes the manifested word or logos. The orthodox Brahmins, those who rise the most against the pantheists and Advaitins, calling them atheists, are forced, if Manu is any authority in this matter, to accept the death of Brahma, the creator, at the expiration of every age of this deity 100 divine years, a period which in our years requires 15 figures to express. Yet no philosopher among them will view this death in any other sense than as a temporary disappearance from the manifested plane of existence, or as a periodical rest. The occultists are, therefore, at one with the Advaita Vedantin philosophers as to the above tenet. They show, on philosophical grounds, the impossibility of accepting the idea of the absolute all-creating, or even evolving the golden egg, into which it is said to enter, in order to transform itself into Brahma, the creator, who later expands himself into the gods and all the visible universe. They say that absolute unity cannot pass to infinity, for infinity presupposes the limitless extension of something, and the duration of that something, and the one all-like space, which is its only mental and physical representation on this earth, or our plane of existence, is neither an object of, nor a subject to, perception. If one could suppose the eternal infinite all, the omnipresent unity, instead of being in eternity, becoming through periodical manifestation a manifold universe or a multiple personality, that unity would cease to be one. Locke's idea that pure space is capable of neither resistance nor motion is incorrect. Space is neither a limitless void nor a conditioned fullness, but both. Being on the plane of absolute abstraction the ever-incognizable deity, which is void only to finite minds, and on that of Mayavic perception, the plenum, the absolute container of all that is, whether manifested or unmanifested, it is, therefore, that absolute all. There is no difference between the Christian apostles in him. We live and move, and have our being, and the Hindu rishis page 038 the universe lives in, proceeds from, and will return to, Brahma. For Brahman, neuter, the unmanifested, is that universe in abscondito, and Brahma, the manifested, is the logos, made male-female in the symbolical orthodox dogmas. The god of the apostle initiate and of the rishi being both the unseen and the visible space. Space is called, in esoteric symbolism, the seven-skinned eternal mother-father. From its undifferentiated to its differentiated surface, it is composed of 7 layers. What is that which was, is, and will be, whether there is a universe or not, whether there be gods or none? Asks the esoteric censor catechism. And the answer made is space. It is not the one unknown ever-present God in nature, or nature in abscondito, that is rejected, but the God of human dogma, and his humanized word. Man, in his infinite conceit and inherent pride and vanity, shaped it himself with his sacrilegious hand out of the material he found in his own small brain fabric, and forced it upon his fellows as a direct revelation from the one unrevealed space. The occultist accepts revelation as coming from divine yet still finite beings, the manifested lives, never from the unmanifestable one life, from those entities, called primordial man, Dhyani Buddhas, or Dhyan Chohans, the Rishi Prajapati of the Hindus, the Elohim or page 039 sons of God of the Jews, the planetary spirits of all nations, who have become gods for men. The occultist also regards the Adi Shakti, the direct emanation of Mula Prakriti, the eternal root of that, and the female aspect of the creative cause, Brahma, in her akashic form of the universal soul as philosophically a Maya, and cause of human Maya. But this view does not prevent him from believing in its existence so long as it lasts, to wit, for one Mahamanvantara, nor from applying Akasha, the radiation of Mula Prakriti, to practical purposes, connected as this world soul is with all natural phenomena known or unknown to science. The oldest religions of the world exoterically, for the esoteric root or foundation, is one or the Indian, the Mazdian, and the Egyptian. Next comes the Chaldean. The outcome of these, now entirely lost to the world, except in its disfigured Sabianism, as at present rendered by the archaeologists. Then, passing over a number of religions that will be mentioned later, comes the Jewish, esoterically following in the line of Babylonian magism, as in the Kabbalah, exoterically, a collection of allegorical legends, as in Genesis and the Pentateuch. Read by the light of the Zohar, the 4 initial chapters of Genesis are the fragment of a highly philosophical page in the world's cosmogony. Left in their symbolical disguise, they are a nursery tale, an ugly thorn in the side of science and logic, an evident effect of karma. To let them serve as a prologue to Christianity was a cruel revenge on the part of the rabbis, who knew better what their Pentateuch meant. It was a silent protest against their spoliation, and the Jews have now certainly the better of their traditional persecutors. The above-named exoteric creeds will be explained in the light of the universal doctrine as we proceed. The occult catechism contains the following questions and answers. What is it that ever is? Space, the eternal anupadaka parentless. What is it that ever was? The germ and the root. What is it that is ever coming and going? The great breath. Then, there are 3 eternals? No, the 3 are one. That which ever is one, that which ever was is one, that which is ever being and becoming is also one, and this is space. Explain, O Lanu disciple. The one is an unbroken circle ring with no circumference, for it is nowhere and everywhere. The one is the boundless plane of the circle, manifesting a diameter only during the manvantaric periods. The one is the indivisible point found nowhere, perceived everywhere during those periods. It is the vertical and the horizontal, the father and the mother, the summit and base of the father, the 2 extremities of the mother, reaching in reality nowhere, for the one is the ring is also the rings that are within that ring. Light and darkness and light, the breath which is eternal. It proceeds from without inwardly, when it is everywhere, and from within outwardly, when it is nowhere, i.e., Maya, one of the centers. It expands and contracts exhalation and inhalation. When it expands, the mother diffuses and scatters. When it contracts, the mother draws back and ingathers. This produces the periods of evolution and dissolution, Manvantara and Pralaya. The germ is invisible and fiery, the root, the plane of the circle, is cool, but during evolution and Manvantara, her garment is cold and radiant. Hot breath is the father who devours the progeny of the many-faced element heterogeneous and leaves the single-faced ones homogeneous. Cool breath is the mother who conceives, forms, brings forth, and receives them back into her bosom to reform them at the dawn of the day of Brahma, her Manvantara. For clearer understanding on the part of the general reader, it must be stated that occult science recognizes 7 cosmic elements, 4 entirely physical, and the 5th, ether, semi-material, which will become visible in the air towards the end of our 4th round, to reign supreme over the others during the whole of the 5th. The remaining 2 are as yet absolutely beyond the range of human perception. They, page 041, will, however, appear as presentments during the 6th and 7th races of this round, and will be fully known in the 6th and 7th rounds respectively. These 7 elements, with their numberless sub-elements, which are far more numerous than those known to science, are simply conditional modifications and aspects of the one and only element. This latter is not ether, not even akasha, but the source of these. The 5th element, now quite freely advocated by science, is not the ether hypothesized by Sir Isaac Newton, although he calls it by that name, having probably associated it in his mind with ether, the father-mother of antiquity. As Newton intuitively says, nature is a perpetual circulatory worker, generating fluids out of solids, fixed things out of volatile, and volatile out of fixed, subtle out of gross, and gross out of subtle. Thus, perhaps, may all things be originated from ether. The reader has to bear in mind that the stanzas treat only of the cosmogony of our own planetary system and of what is visible around it after a solar pralaya. The secret teachings with regard to the evolution of the universal cosmos cannot be given, since they could not be understood by even the highest minds in this age, and there seem to be very few initiates, even among the greatest, who are allowed to speculate upon this subject. Moreover, the teachers say openly that not even the highest Dhyani Chohans have ever penetrated the mysteries beyond those boundaries that separate the milliards of solar systems from the central sun, as it is called. Therefore, that which is given relates only to our visible cosmos after a night of Brahma. Before the reader proceeds to the consideration of the stanzas from the Book of Zion which form the basis of the present work, it is absolutely necessary that he should be made acquainted with the few fundamental conceptions which underlie and pervade the entire system of thought to which his attention is invited. These basic ideas are few in number, but on their clear apprehension depends the understanding of all that follows. Therefore, no apology is required for asking the reader to make himself familiar with these first, before entering on the perusal of the work itself. The Secret Doctrine, then, establishes 3 fundamental propositions: an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle, on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and can only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought, in the words of the Mandukya, unthinkable and unspeakable. To render these ideas clearer to the general reader, let him set out with the postulate that there is one absolute reality which antecedes all manifested, conditioned being. This infinite and eternal cause dimly formulated in the unconscious and unknowable of current European philosophy is the rootless root of all that was, is, or ever shall be. It is of course devoid of all attributes and is essentially without any relation to manifested finite being. It is beingness rather than being, sat in Sanskrit, and is beyond all thought or speculation. This beingness is symbolized in the Secret Doctrine under two aspects. On the one hand, absolute abstract space, representing bare subjectivity, the one thing which no human mind can either exclude from any conception or conceive of by itself. On the other, absolute abstract motion representing unconditioned consciousness. Even our Western thinkers have shown that consciousness is inconceivable to us apart from change, and motion best symbolizes change, its essential characteristic. This latter aspect of the one reality is also symbolized by the term the Great Breath, a symbol sufficiently graphic to need no further elucidation. Thus, then, the first fundamental axiom of the Secret Doctrine is this metaphysical one absolute beingness, symbolized by finite intelligence as the theological Trinity. It may, however, assist the student if a few further explanations are here given. Herbert Spencer has of late so far modified his agnosticism as to assert that the nature of the first cause, which the occultist more logically derives from the causeless cause, the eternal, and the unknowable, may be essentially the same as that of the consciousness which wells up within us. In short, that the impersonal reality pervading the cosmos is the pure noumenon of thought. This advance on his part brings him very near to the esoteric and Vedantan tenet. Parabrahman, the one reality, the absolute, is the field of absolute consciousness, i.e., that essence which is out of all relation to conditioned existence, and of which conscious existence is a conditioned symbol. But once that we pass in thought from this, to us, absolute negation, duality supervenes in the contrast of spirit, or consciousness, and matter, subject, and object. Spirit, or consciousness, and matter are, however, to be regarded not as independent realities, but as the two symbols or aspects of the absolute, Parabrahman, which constitute the basis of conditioned being whether subjective or objective. Considering this metaphysical triad as the root from which proceeds all manifestation, the Great Breath assumes the character of pre-cosmic ideation. It is the fons et origo of force and of all individual consciousness, and supplies the guiding intelligence in the vast scheme of cosmic evolution. On the other hand, pre-cosmic root substance, mulaprakriti, is that aspect of the absolute, which underlies all the objective planes of nature. Just as pre-cosmic ideation is the root of all individual consciousness, so pre-cosmic substance is the substratum of matter in the various grades of its differentiation. Hence it will be apparent that the contrast of these two aspects of the absolute is essential to the existence of the manifested universe. Apart from cosmic substance, cosmic ideation could not manifest as individual consciousness, since it is only through a vehicle, upadhi, of matter that consciousness wells up as ayamaya, physical basis being necessary to focus a ray of the universal mind at a certain stage of complexity. Again, apart from cosmic ideation, cosmic substance would remain an empty abstraction, and no emergence of consciousness could ensue. The manifested universe, therefore, is pervaded by duality, which is, as it were, the very essence of its existence as manifestation. But just as the opposite poles of subject and object, spirit and matter, are but aspects of the one unity in which they are synthesized, so, in the manifested universe, there is that which links spirit to matter, subject to object. The something, at present unknown to Western speculation, is called by occultists Fohet. It is the bridge by which the ideas existing in the divine thought are impressed on cosmic substance as the laws of nature. Foid is thus the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation. Or, regarded from the other side, it is the intelligent medium, the guiding power of all manifestation, the thought divine transmitted and made manifest through the Dayan Chohans, the architects of the visible world. Thus from spirit, or cosmic ideation, comes our consciousness, from cosmic substance the several vehicles in which that consciousness is individualized and attains to self or reflective consciousness, while Fohit, in its various manifestations, is the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life. The following summary will afford a clearer idea to the reader. Absoluteness. The Parabrahman of the Vedantins are the one reality, Sat, which is, as Hegel says, both absolute being and non-being. The first Logos, the impersonal, and, in philosophy, unmanifested Logos, the precursor of the manifested. This is the first cause, the unconscious of European pantheists. The second Logos, spirit matter, life, the spirit of the universe, Purusha, and Prakriti. The third Logos, cosmic ideation, Mahit, or intelligence, the universal world soul, the cosmic noumenon of matter, the basis of the intelligent operations in and of nature, also called Mahabhuti. The one reality, its dual aspects in the conditioned universe. Further, the Secret Doctrine affirms the eternity of the universe in toto is a boundless plane, periodically the playground of numberless universes incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars, and page 045, the sparks of eternity. The eternity of the pilgrim is like a wink of the eye of self-existence, as the Book of Dizan puts it. The appearance and disappearance of worlds is like a regular tidal ebb of flux and reflux. This second assertion of the Secret Doctrine is the absolute universality of that law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. An alternation such as that of day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking, is a fact so common, so perfectly universal and without exception, that it is easy to comprehend that in it, we see one of the absolutely fundamental laws of the universe. Moreover, the Secret Doctrine teaches the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal over-soul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root, and the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul a spark of the former through the cycle of incarnation, or necessity, in accordance with cyclic and karmic law, during the whole term. In other words, no purely spiritual body, divine soul, can have an independent conscious existence before the spark which issued from the pure essence of the universal sixth principle or the oversoul has a. passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of that manvantara, and b. acquired individuality, first by natural impulse, and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts, checked by its karma, thus ascending through all the degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest manas, from mineral and plant, up to the holiest archangel, Dhyani Buddha. The pivotal doctrine of the esoteric philosophy admits no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit throughout a long series of metempsychosis and reincarnations. This is why the Hindus say that the universe is Brahman and Brahma, for Brahman is in every atom of the universe, the six principles in nature, being all the outcome the variously differentiated aspects of the seventh and one, the only reality in the universe, whether cosmic or microcosmic, and also why the permutations, psychic, spiritual and physical, on the plane of manifestation and form, of the sixth, Brahma, the vehicle of Brahman, are viewed by metaphysical antiphrasis as illusive and maiavic. For although the root of every atom individually, and of every form collectively, is that seventh principle or the one reality, still, in its manifested phenomenal and temporary appearance, it is no better than an evanescent illusion of our senses. In its absoluteness, the one principle under its two aspects, para-Brahman and mula-prakriti, is sexless, unconditioned and eternal. Its periodical manvantaric emanation, or primal radiation, is also one, androgynous and phenomenally finite. When the radiation radiates in its turn, all its radiations are also androgynous, to become male and female principles in their lower aspects. After pralaya, whether the great or minor pralaya, the latter leaving the worlds in statu quo, the first, that reawakes to active life, is the plastic akasha, father-mother, the spirit and soul of ether, or the plane of the circle. Space is called the mother before its cosmic activity, and father-mother at the first stage of reawakening. In the Kabbalah it is also father-mother-son. But whereas in the Eastern doctrine, these are the seventh principle of the manifested universe, or its Atma Buddhi Manas, spirit soul intelligence, the triad branching off and dividing into seven cosmical and seven human principles. In the Western Kabbalah of the Christian mystics, it is the triad or trinity, and with their occultists, the male-female Jehovah, Jahava. In this lies the whole difference between the esoteric and the Christian trinities. The mystics and the philosophers, the Eastern and Western pantheists, synthesize their pregenetic triad in the pure divine abstraction. The Orthodox anthropomorphize it. Hiranyagarbha, Hari, and Shankara, the three hypostases of the manifesting spirit of the Supreme Spirit, by which title Prithivi, the earth, greets Vishnu in his first avatar, are the purely metaphysical abstract qualities of formation, preservation, and destruction, and are the three divine avasthas, hypostases, of that which does not perish with created things, achyuta, a name of Vishnu. Whereas the Orthodox Christian separates his personal creative deity into the three personages of the Trinity and admits of no higher deity. The latter, in occultism, is the abstract triangle, with the Orthodox, the perfect cube. The creative page 047 God, or the aggregate gods, are regarded by the Eastern philosopher as Brantadarshanatta, false appearances, something conceived of, by reason of erroneous appearances, as a material form, and explained as arising from the illusive conception of the egotistic personal and human soul, lower fifth principle. It is beautifully expressed in a revised translation in Fitz-Edward Hull's notes to Wilson's translation of the Vishnu Purana. That Brahma in its totality has essentially the aspect of Prakriti, both evolved and unevolved mula-prakriti, and also the aspect of spirit and the aspect of time. Spirit, O twice born, is the leading aspect of the Supreme Brahma. The next is a twofold aspect, Prakriti, both evolved and unevolved, and time is the last. Cronus is shown in the Orphic Theogony also as being a generated god or agent. At this stage of the reawakening of the universe, the sacred symbolism represents it as a perfect circle with the point, root, in the center. This sign was universal, therefore we find it in the Kabbalah also. The Western Kabbalah, however, now in the hands of Christian mystics, ignores it altogether, though it is plainly shown in the Zohar. These sectarians begin at the end and give, as the symbol of pregenetic cosmos, cross, calling it the union of the rose and cross, the great mystery of occult generation, from whence the name Rosicrucian, rose cross. This may be seen from one of the most important and best known of their symbols, one which has never been hitherto understood even by modern mystics. It is that of the pelican tearing open its breast to feed its seven little ones, the real creed of the Brothers of the Rosy Cross, and a direct outcome from the Eastern secret doctrine. Brahman, neuter, is called Kalahamsa, meaning, as explained by Western Orientalists, the eternal swan, or goose, and so is Brahma, the creator. A great mistake is thus brought under notice. It is Brahman, neuter, which ought to be referred to as Hamsa Vahana, that which uses the swan as its vehicle, and not Brahma, the creator, who is the real Kalahamsa, while Brahman, neuter, is Hamsa, and Ahamsa, as will be explained in the commentaries. Let it be understood that the terms Brahma and Para-Brahman are not used here because they belong to our esoteric nomenclature, but simply because they are more familiar to the students in the West. Both are the perfect equivalents of our 1, 3, and 7 vowel terms, which stand for the one all and the one all in all. Such are the basic conceptions on which the Secret Doctrine rests. It would not be in place here to enter upon any defense or proof of their inherent reasonableness, nor can I pause to show how they are, in fact, contained though too often under a misleading guise in every system of thought or philosophy worthy of the name. Once that the reader has gained a clear comprehension of them, and realized the light which they throw on every problem of life, they will need no further justification in his eyes, because their truth will be to him as evident as the sun in heaven. I pass on, therefore, to the subject matter of the stanzas as given in this volume, adding a skeleton outline of them, in the hope of thereby rendering the task of the student more easy, by placing before him in a few words the general conception therein explained. The history of cosmic evolution, as traced in the stanzas, is, so to say, the abstract algebraical formula of that evolution. Hence the student must not expect to find there an account of all the stages and transformations which intervened between the first beginnings of universal evolution and our present state. To give such an account would be as impossible as it would be incomprehensible to men who cannot grasp the nature of even the plane of existence, next to that to which, for the moment, their consciousness is limited. The stanzas, therefore, give an abstract formula which can be applied, mutatis mutandis, to all evolution. To that of our tiny Earth, to that of the chain of planets of which that Earth forms one, to the solar universe to which that chain belongs, and so on, in an ascending scale, till the mind reels and is exhausted in the effort. The 7 stanzas given in this volume represent the 7 terms of this abstract formula. They refer to, and describe, the 7 great stages of the evolutionary process, which are spoken of in the Puranas as the 7 creations, and in the Bible as the days of creation. Stanza I describes the state of the one all during Pralaya, before the first flutter of reawakening manifestation. A moment's thought shows that such a state can only be symbolized. To describe it is impossible. Nor can it be symbolized except in negatives, page 0494, since it is the state of absoluteness per se. It can possess none of those specific attributes which serve us to describe objects in positive terms. Hence that state can only be suggested by the negatives of all those most abstract attributes which men feel rather than conceive, as the remotest limits attainable by their power of conception. Describes a stage which, to a Western mind, is so nearly identical with that mentioned in stanza I, that to express the idea of its difference would require a treatise in itself. Hence it must be left to the intuition and the higher faculties of the reader to grasp, as far as he can, the meaning of the allegorical phrases used. Indeed, it must be remembered that all these stanzas appeal to the inner faculties rather than to the ordinary comprehension of the physical brain. Describes the reawakening of the universe to life after Pralaya. It depicts the emergence of the monads from their state of absorption within the One, the earliest and highest stage in the formation of worlds, the term monad being one which may apply equally to the vastest solar system or the tiniest atom. shows the differentiation of the germ of the universe into the septenary hierarchy of conscious divine powers, which are the active manifestations of the one supreme energy. They are the framers, shapers, and ultimately the creators of all the manifested universe, in the only sense in which the name creator is intelligible. They inform and guide it. They are the intelligent beings who adjust and control evolution, embodying in themselves those manifestations of the one law, which we know as the laws of nature. Generically, they are known as the Dayan Chohans, though each of the various groups has its own designation in the Secret Doctrine. This stage of evolution is spoken of in Hindu mythology as the creation of the gods. Describes the process of world formation. First, diffused cosmic matter, then the fiery whirlwind, the first stage in the formation of a nebula. This nebula condenses, and after passing through various transformations, forms a solar universe, a planetary chain, or a single planet, as the case may be. Indicates the subsequent stages in the formation of a world, and brings the evolution of such a world down to its fourth great period, corresponding to the period in which we are now living. Continues the history, tracing the descent of life down to the appearance of man, and thus closes the first book of the Secret Doctrine. The development of man from his first appearance on this earth and this round to the state in which we now find him will form the subject of Book 2. The stanzas which form the thesis of every section are given throughout in their modern translated version, as it would be worse than useless to make the subject still more difficult by introducing the archaic phraseology of the original, with its puzzling style and words. Extracts are given from the Chinese, Tibetan and Sanskrit translations of the original censor commentaries and glosses on the Book of Zion, now rendered for the first time into a European language. It is almost unnecessary to state that only portions of the 7 stanzas are here given. Were they published complete, they would remain incomprehensible to all save a few high occultists. Nor is there any need to assure the reader that no more than most of the profane does the writer, or rather the humble recorder, understand those forbidden passages. To facilitate the reading, and to avoid the too frequent reference to footnotes, it was thought best to blend together texts and glosses, using the Sanskrit and Tibetan proper names whenever these could not be avoided, in preference to giving the originals. The more so as the said terms are all accepted synonyms, the latter only being used between a master and his chelas, or disciples. Thus, were one to translate into English, using only the substantives and technical terms as employed in one of the Tibetan and censor versions, Shloka 1 would read as follows: Fo agan jai jayu slep 7 korlo. Zidmanas jiba. All naik bosom. Conch hog not, Thian cam not, La chohin not, Tenbril chugni not, Dharmakaya ceased, Genchang not become. Barnang and Sa and Govanyuj, alone Tho Agyansan in Night of Sun Chan and Yong Grub Paranishpana. This would sound like pure abracadabra. As this work is written for the instruction of students of occultism, and not for the benefit of philologists, we may well avoid such foreign terms wherever it is possible to do so. The untranslatable terms alone, incomprehensible unless their meanings are explained, are left, but all such terms are rendered in their Sanskrit form. Needless to remind the reader that these are, in almost every case, the late developments of the latter language, and pertain to the 5th root race. Sanskrit, as now known, was not spoken by the Atlanteans, and most of the philosophical terms used in the systems of the India of the page 051 post-Mahabharatan period are not found in the Vedas, nor are they to be met within the original stanzas, but only their equivalents. The reader who is not a theosophist is once more invited to regard all that follows as a fairy tale, if he likes, at best as one of the yet unproven speculations of dreamers, and, at the worst, as an additional hypothesis to the many scientific hypotheses past, present, and future, some exploded, others still lingering. It is not in any sense less scientific than are many of the so-called scientific theories, and it is in every case more philosophical and probable. In view of the abundant comments and explanations required, the references to the footnotes are marked in the usual way, while the sentences to be commented upon are marked with letters. Additional matter will be found in the chapters on symbolism, which are often more full of information than the commentaries. 7 stanzas from the Book of Zion, with commentaries. Nor ought nor not existed. Yon bright sky was not, nor heaven's broad roof outstretched above. What covered all? What sheltered? What concealed? Was it the water's fathomless abyss? There was no death, yet there was not a mortal. There was no confine betwixt day and night. The only one breathed breathless by itself, other than it there nothing since has been. Darkness there was, and all at first was veiled in gloom profound, an ocean without light. The germ that still lay covered in the husk burst forth, one nature, from the fervent heat. Who knows the secret? Who proclaimed it here? Whence this manifold creation sprang? The gods themselves came later into being. Who knows from whence this great creation sprang? That, whence all this great creation came, whether its will created or was mute, the most high seer that is in highest heaven, he knows it, or perchance even he knows not. Gazing into eternity ere the foundations of the earth were laid, thou wert. And when the subterranean flame shall burst its prison, and devour the frame, thou shalt be still as thou wert before, and know no change, when time shall be no more. Oh, endless thought, divine eternity! The eternal parent, wrapped in her ever-invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. Time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration. Universal mind was not, for there were no ahai to contain it. The 7 ways to bliss were not. The great causes of misery were not, for there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. Darkness alone filled the boundless all, for Father, Mother, and Son were once more one, and the Son had not yet awakened for the new wheel in his pilgrimage thereon. The 7 sublime lords and the 7 truths had ceased to be, and the universe, the son of necessity, was immersed in paranishpanna, to be outbreathed by that which is, and yet is not. Naught was. The causes of existence had been done away with. The visible that was, and the invisible that is, rested in eternal non-being, the one being. Alone, the one form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all-presence, which is sensed by the opened eye of Dangma. But where was Dangma, when the Alaya of the universe was in Paramartha, and the great wheel was in Upadaka? Where were the builders, the luminous sons of Manvantaric dawn, in the unknown darkness in their ahai paranishpanna? The producers of form from no form, the root of the world, the Devamatri and Svabhavat, rested in the bliss of non-being. Where was silence? Where the ears to sense it? No, there was neither silence nor sound, naught save ceaseless eternal breath, which knows itself not. The hour had not yet struck, the ray had not yet flashed into the germ, the Matrapadma had not yet swollen. Her heart had not yet opened for the one ray to enter, thence to fall, as 3 into 4, into the lap of Maya. The 7 were not yet born from the web of light. Darkness alone was Father, Mother, Svabhavat, and Svabhavat was in darkness. These 2 are the germ, and the germ is one. The universe was still concealed in the divine thought and the divine bosom. The last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within without, like the bud of the lotus. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes over the slumbering waters of life. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal germ, which condenses into the world egg. The three fall into the four. The radiant essence becomes seven inside, seven outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is three, curdles and spreads in milk-white curds throughout the depths of mother, the root that grows in the depths of the ocean of life. The root remains, the light remains, the curds remain, and still the Ahu is one. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire, and heat, and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, of father and mother. Behold, Ol Anu, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled refulgent glory bright space, son of dark space, who emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is Iahu, the younger, the Dadi shines forth as the sun, he is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The Ika is chatter, and chatter takes to itself Tri, and the union produces the Sapta, in whom are the seven, which become the Tridasha, the hosts and the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil, and page 059 unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above, and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones, and turns the upper into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested into the great waters. Where was the germ, and where was now darkness? Where is the spirit of the flame that burns in thy lamp, Ol Anu? The germ is that, and that is light, the white brilliant sun of the dark hidden father. Light is cold flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the great mother. Father mother spin a web, whose upper end is fastened to spirit, the light of the one darkness, and the lower one to its shadowy end, matter. And this web is the universe, spun out of the two substances made in one, which is Stavavit. It expands when the breath of fire is upon it. It contracts when the breath of the mother touches it. Then the sons dissociate and scatter, to return into their mother's bosom, at the end of the great day, and re-become one with her. When it is cooling, it becomes radiant. Its sons expand and contract through their own selves and hearts. They embrace infinitude. Then Stavavit sends Fohit to harden the atoms. Each is a part of the web. Reflecting the self-existent Lord, like a mirror, each becomes in turn a world. Listen, ye sons of the earth, to your instructors the sons of the fire. Learn, there is neither first nor last, for all is one number, issued from no number. Learn what we, who descend from the primordial seven, we, who are born from the primordial flame, have learned from our fathers. From the effulgency of light the ray of the ever-darkness sprang in space the reawakened energies, the one from the egg, the six, and the five. Then the three, the one, the four, the one, the five, the twice seven, the sum total. And these are the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, the arupa, the rupa, and the force or divine man, the sum total. And from the divine man emanated the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the sacred fathers within the holy four. This was the army of the voice, the divine mother of the seven. The sparks of the seven are subject to, and the servants of, the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh of the seven. These are called spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, and modelers, for thus stands the eternal Nidana the Oihahu. The Oihahu, which is darkness, the boundless, or the no number, Adi Nidana Svabhavat, the circle. The Adi Sanat, the number, for he is one. The voice of the word, Spabhavat, the numbers, for he is 1 and 9. The formless square. And these three, enclosed within the circle, are the sacred 4, and the 10 are the Arupa universe. Then come the suns, the 7 fighters, the 1, the 8 left out, and his breath which is the light maker. Then the second 7, who are the Lipika, produced by the 3. The rejected sun is 1. The sun's sons are countless. The primordial 7, the first 7 breaths of the dragon of wisdom, produce in their turn from their holy circumgyrating breaths the fiery whirlwind. They make of him the messenger of their will. The Dzayu becomes Fohit, the swift son of the divine sons, whose page 062 sons are the Lipika, runs circular errands. Fohit is the steed, and the thought is the rider. He passes like lightning through the fiery clouds, takes 3, and 5, and 7 strides through the 7 regions above, and the 7 below. He lifts his voice, and calls the innumerable sparks, and joins them together. He is their guiding spirit and leader. When he commences work, he separates the sparks of the lower kingdom, that float and thrill with joy in their radiant wellings, and forms therewith the germs of wheels. He places them in the 6 directions of space, and one in the middle the central wheel. Fohit traces spiral lines to unite the 6th to the 7th the crown. An army of the sons of light stands at each angle, the Lipika, in the middle wheel. They say, his is good. The first divine world is ready, the first, the second. Then the divine Arupa reflects itself in Chayaloka, the first garment of Anupadaka. Fohit takes 5 strides, and builds a winged wheel at each corner of the square for the 4 holy ones and their armies. The Lipika circumscribe the triangle, the first one, the cube, the second one, and the pentacle within the egg. It is the ring called pass, not for those who descend and ascend, who during the Kalpa are progressing towards the great day be with us. Thus were formed the Arupa and Arupa. From one light, 7 lights, from each of the 7, 7 times 7 lights. The wheels watch the ring. By the power of the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge, Kuan Yin the triple of Kuan Shai Yin, residing in Kuan Yin Tian Fohit, the breath of their progeny, the son of the sons, having called forth, from the lower abyss, the elusive form of Xian Chan and the 7 elements. The swift and the radiant one produces the 7 Laya centers, against which none will prevail to the great day be with us, and seats the universe on these eternal foundations, surrounding Xian Chan with the elementary germs. Of the 7 first 1 manifested, 6 concealed, 2 manifested, 5 concealed, 3 manifested, 4 concealed, 4 produced, 3 hidden, 4 and 1 san revealed, 2 and 1 half concealed, 6 to be manifested, 1 laid aside. Lastly, 7 small wheels revolving, one giving birth to the other. He builds them in the likeness of older wheels, placing them on the imperishable centers. How does Fohit build them? He collects the fiery dust. He makes balls of fire, runs through them, and round them, infusing life thereinto, then sets them into motion, some one way, some the other way. They are cold, he makes them hot. They are dry, he makes them moist. They shine, he fans and cools them. Thus acts Fohit from one twilight to the other, during 7 eternities. At the 4th, the sons are told to create their images. 1/3 refuses. 2 obey. The curse is pronounced. They will be born in the 4th, suffer and cause suffering. This is the first war. The older wheels rotated downward and upward. The mother's spawn filled the hole. There were battles fought between the creators and the destroyers, and battles fought for space, the seed appearing and reappearing continuously. Make thy calculations, O Lanu, if thou wouldst learn the correct age of thy small wheel. Its fourth spoke is our mother. Reach the fourth fruit of the fourth path of knowledge that leads to nirvana, and thou shalt comprehend, for thou shalt see. Behold the beginning of sentient formless life. First, the divine, the one from the mother spirit, then, the spiritual, the three from the one, the four from the one, and the five, from which the three, the five and the seven. These are the threefold and the fourfold downward, the mind-born sons of the first Lord, the shining seven. It is they who are thou, I, he, O Lanu, they who watch over thee and thy mother, Bhumi. The one ray multiplies the smaller rays. Life precedes form, and life survives the last atom. Through the countless rays the life ray, the one, like a thread through many beads. When the one becomes two, the threefold appears, and the three are one, and it is our thread, O Lanu, the heart of the man plant called Saptaparna. It is the root that never dies, the three-tongued flame of the four wicks. The wicks are the sparks that draw from the three-tongued flame shot out by the seven. There flame the beams and sparks of one moon reflected in the running waves of all the rivers of earth. The spark hangs from the flame by the finest thread of Fohit. It journeys through the seven worlds of Maya. It stops in the first, and as a metal and a stone, it passes into the second, and behold a plant. The plant whirls through seven changes and becomes a sacred animal. From the combined attributes of these, Manu, the thinker, is formed. Who forms him? The seven lives and the one life. Who completes him? The fivefold law. And who perfects the last body? Fish, sin, and soma. From the firstborn the thread between the silent watcher and his shadow becomes more strong and radiant with every change. The morning sunlight is changed into noonday glory. This is thy present wheel, said the flame to the spark. Thou art myself, my image and my shadow. I have clothed myself in thee, and thou art my Vahan to the day be with us, when thou shalt re-become myself and others, thyself and me. Then the builders, having donned their first clothing, descend on radiant earth and reign over men who are themselves. Thus ends this portion of the archaic narrative, dark, confused, almost incomprehensible. An attempt will now be made to throw light into this darkness, to make sense out of this apparent nonsense. Commentaries on the seven stanzas and their terms, according to their numeration, in stanzas and shlokas. The eternal parent, wrapped in her ever-invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. The parent, space, is the eternal, ever-present cause of all the incomprehensible deity, whose invisible robes are the mystic root of all matter and of the universe. Space is the one eternal thing that we can most easily imagine, immovable in its abstraction, and uninfluenced by either the presence or absence in it of an objective universe. It is without dimension, in every sense, and self-existent. Spirit is the first differentiation from that, the causeless cause of both spirit and matter. As taught in the Esoteric Catechism, it is neither limitless void, nor conditioned fullness, but both. It was and ever will be. Thus, the robes stand for the noumenon of undifferentiated cosmic matter. It is not matter as we know it, but the spiritual essence of matter, and is co-eternal, and even one with space in its abstract sense. Root nature is also the source of the subtle invisible properties in visible matter. It is the soul, so to say, of the one infinite spirit. The Hindus call it Mula Prakriti, and say that it is the primordial substance, which is the basis of the up-adhere vehicle of every phenomenon, whether physical, psychic or mental. It is the source from which Akasha radiates. By the seven eternities, eons, or periods are meant. The word eternity, as understood in Christian theology, has no meaning to the Asiatic ear, except in its application to the one existence, nor is the term sempiternity, the eternal only in futurity, anything better than a misnomer. Such words do not and cannot exist in philosophical metaphysics and were unknown till the advent of ecclesiastical Christianity. The seven eternities mean the seven periods, or a period answering in its duration to the seven periods of a Manvantara, extending throughout a Mahakalpa or Great Age, 100 years of Brahma, making a total of 311,040 billion of years, each year of Brahma being composed of 360 days, and of the same number of nights of Brahma, reckoning by the Chandrayana or lunar year, and a day of Brahma consisting of 4,320,000 of mortal years. These eternities belong to the most secret calculations, in which, in order to arrive at the true total, every figure must be 7x, x varying according to the nature of the cycle in the subjective or real world, and every figure relating to, or representing, the different cycles from the greatest to the smallest in the objective or unreal world must necessarily be multiples of 7. The key to this cannot be given, for herein lies the mystery of esoteric calculations, and for the purposes of ordinary calculation it has no sense. The number 7, says the Kabbalah, is the great number of the divine mysteries. Number 10 is that of all human knowledge, the Pythagorean decade. 1000 is the number 10 to the third power, and therefore the number 7000 is also symbolical. In the Secret Doctrine, the figure 4 is the male symbol only on the highest plane of abstraction. On the plane of matter, the 3 is the masculine, and the 4 the feminine, the upright, and the horizontal in the fourth stage of symbolism, when the symbols become the glyphs of the generative powers on the physical plane. Time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration. Time is only an illusion produced by the succession of our states of consciousness as we travel through eternal duration, and it does not exist where no consciousness exists in which the illusion can be produced, but lies asleep. The present is only a mathematical line which divides that part of eternal duration which we call the future from that part which we call the past. Nothing on earth has real duration, for nothing remains without change or the same for the billionth part of a second. And the sensation we have of the actuality of the division of time known as the present comes from the blurring of the momentary glimpse, or succession of glimpses, of things that our senses give us, as those things pass from the region of ideals, which we call the future, to the region of memories, that we name the past. In the same way we experience a sensation of duration in the case of the instantaneous electric spark, by reason of the blurred and continuing impression on the retina. The real person or thing does not consist solely of what is seen at any particular moment, but is composed of the sum of all its various and changing conditions from its appearance in material form to its disappearance from earth. It is these sum totals that exist from eternity in the future and pass by degrees through matter to exist for eternity in the past. No one would say that a bar of metal dropped into the sea came into existence as it left the air and ceased to exist as it entered the water, and that the bar itself consisted only of that cross-section thereof which at any given moment coincided with the mathematical plane that separates and, at the same time, joins the atmosphere and the ocean. Even so of persons and things, which, dropping out of the to be into the has been, out of the future into the past present momentarily to our senses a cross-section, as it were, of their total selves, as they pass through time and space, as matter, on their way from one eternity to another, and these two eternities constitute that duration in which alone anything has true existence, were our senses but able to cognize it. Universal mind was not, for there were no ahai to contain it. Mind is a name given to the sum of the states of consciousness, grouped under thought, will and feeling. During deep sleep ideation ceases on the physical plane, and memory is in abeyance, thus for the time being mind is not, because the organ, through which the ego manifests ideation and memory on the material plane, has temporarily ceased to function. A noumenon can become a phenomenon on any plane of existence only by manifesting on that plane through an appropriate basis or vehicle. And during the long night of rest called pralaya, when all the existences are dissolved, the universal mind remains as a permanent possibility of mental action, or as that abstract absolute thought, of which mind is the concrete relative manifestation. The ahai, Dayan Chohans, are the collective hosts of spiritual beings, the angelic hosts of Christianity, the Elohim and messengers of the Jews, who are the vehicle for the manifestation of the divine or universal thought and will. They are the intelligent forces that give to, and enact in, nature her laws, while they themselves act according to laws imposed upon them in a similar manner by still higher powers. But they are not the personifications of the powers of nature, as erroneously thought. This hierarchy of spiritual beings, through which the universal mind comes into action, is like an army, a host, truly by means of which the fighting power of a nation manifests itself, and which is composed of army corps, divisions, brigades, regiments, and so forth, each with its separate individuality or life, and its limited freedom of action and limited responsibilities, each contained in a larger individuality, to which its own interests are subservient, and each containing lesser individualities in itself. The 7 ways to bliss were not. The great causes of misery were not, for there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. There are 7 paths or ways to the bliss of non-existence, which is absolute being, existence and consciousness. They were not, because the universe, so far, was empty, and existed only in the divine thought. For it is the 12 nidanas, or causes of being. Each is the effect of its antecedent cause, and a cause, in its turn, to its successor. The sum total of the nidanas, being based on the 4 truths, a doctrine especially characteristic of the Hinayana system. They belong to the theory of the stream of catenated law which produces merit and demerit, and finally brings karma into full sway. It is a system based upon the great truth that reincarnation is to be dreaded, as existence in this world entails upon man only suffering, misery and pain, death itself being unable to deliver man from it, since death is merely the door through which he passes to another life on earth after a little rest on its threshold devachan. The Hinayana system, or school of the little vehicle, is of very ancient growth, while the Mahayana, or school of the great vehicle, is of a later period, having originated after the death of Buddha. Yet the tenets of the latter are as old as the hills that have contained such schools from time immemorial, and the Hinayana and Mahayana schools both teach the same doctrine in reality. Yana, or vehicle, is a mystic expression, both vehicles inculcating that man may escape the sufferings of rebirth, and even the false bliss of devachan, by obtaining wisdom and knowledge, which alone can dispel the fruits of illusion and ignorance. Maya, or illusion, is an element which enters into all finite things, for everything that exists has only a relative, not an absolute, reality, since the appearance which the hidden noumenon assumes for any observer depends upon his power of cognition. To the untrained eye of the savage, a painting is at first an unmeaning confusion of streaks and daubs of color, while an educated eye sees instantly a face or a landscape. Nothing is permanent except the one hidden absolute existence which contains in itself the noumena of all realities. The existences belonging to every plane of being, up to the highest Dayan Chohans, are, comparatively, like the shadows cast by a magic lantern on a colorless screen. Nevertheless, all things are relatively real, for the cognizer is also a reflection, and the things cognized are therefore as real to him as himself. Whatever reality things possess must be looked for in them before or after they have passed like a flash through the material world, for we cannot cognize any such existence directly, so long as we have sense instruments which bring only material existence into the field of our consciousness. Whatever plane our consciousness may be acting in, both we and the things belonging to that plane are, for the time being, our only realities. But as we rise in the scale of development, we perceive that in the stages through which we have passed, we mistook shadows for realities, and that the upward progress of the ego is a series of progressive awakenings, each advance bringing with it the idea that now, at last, we have reached reality, but only when we shall have reached absolute consciousness and blended our own with it shall we be free from the delusions produced by Maya. Darkness alone filled the boundless all, for Father, Mother, and Son were once more one, and the Son had not yet awakened for the new wheel in his pilgrimage thereon. Darkness is Father, Mother, light their Son, says an old Eastern proverb. Light is inconceivable except as coming from some source which is the cause of it, and as, in the case of primordial light, that source is unknown, though so strongly demanded by reason and logic, therefore it is called darkness by us, from an intellectual point of view. As to borrowed or secondary light, whatever its source, it can be only of a temporary maiavic character. Darkness, then, is the eternal matrix in which the sources of light appear and disappear. Nothing is added to darkness to make of it light, or to light to make it darkness, on this our plane. They are interchangeable, and, scientifically, light is but a mode of darkness and vice versa. Yet both are phenomena of the same noumenon, which is absolute darkness to the scientific mind, and but a great twilight to the perception of the average mystic, though to that of the spiritual eye of the initiated is absolute light. How far we discern the light that shines in darkness depends upon our powers of vision. What is light to us is darkness to certain insects, and the eye of the clairvoyant sees illumination where the normal eye perceives only blackness. When the whole universe was plunged in sleep, had returned to its one primordial element, there was neither center of luminosity, nor eye to perceive light, and darkness necessarily filled the boundless all. The Father and Mother are the male and female principles in root nature, the opposite poles, that manifest in all things on every plane of cosmos or spirit and substance, in a less allegorical aspect, the resultant of which is the universe, or the sun. They are once more one, when in the night of Brahma, during Pralaya, all in the objective universe has returned to its one primal and eternal cause, to reappear at the following dawn as it does periodically. Karana, eternal cause, was alone. To put it more plainly, Karana is alone during the nights of Brahma. The previous objective universe has dissolved into its one primal and eternal cause, and is, so to say, held in solution in space, to differentiate again, and crystallize out anew at the following Manvateric dawn, which is the commencement of a new day, or new activity of Brahma, the symbol of a universe. In esoteric parlance, Brahma is Father, Mother, Son, her spirit, soul, and body at once, each personage being symbolical of an attribute, and each attribute or quality being a graduated efflux of divine breath in its cyclic differentiation, involutionary and evolutionary. In the cosmico-physical sense, it is the universe, the planetary chain and the earth. In the purely spiritual, the unknown deity, planetary spirit, and man, the son of the two, the creature of spirit and matter, and a manifestation of them in his periodical appearances on earth during the wheels, or the manvantaras. The seven sublime lords and the seven truths had ceased to be, and the universe, the son of necessity, was immersed in paranishpanna, to be outbreathed by that which is, and yet is not. Not was, see. The seven sublime lords are the seven creative spirits, the Dayan Chohans, who correspond to the Hebrew Elohim. It is the same hierarchy of archangels to which Saint Michael, Saint Gabriel, and others belong, in Christian theogony. Only while Saint Michael, for instance, is allowed in dogmatic Latin theology to watch over all the promontories and gulfs. In the esoteric system, the Dionysus watch successively over one of the rounds and the great root traces of our planetary chain. They are, moreover, said to send their bodhisattvas, the human correspondents of the Dhyani Buddhas, during every round and race. Out of the seven truths and revelations, or rather revealed secrets, 4 only have been handed to us, as we are still in the 4th round, and the world also has had only 4 Buddhas so far. This is a very complicated question, and will receive more ample treatment later on. So far there are only 4 truths, and 4 Vedas, say the Buddhists and Hindus. For a similar reason, Irenaeus insisted on the necessity of 4 Gospels. But as every new root race at the head of a round must have its revelation and revealers, the next round will bring the 5th, the following the 6th, and so on. Paranishpanna is the absolute perfection to which all existences attain at the close of a great period of activity, Mahamanvantara, and in which they rest during the succeeding period of repose. In Tibetan it is called Yong-grub. Up to the day of the Yogacharya school, the true nature of paranirvana was taught publicly, but since then it has become entirely esoteric, hence so many contradictory interpretations of it. It is only a true idealist who can understand it. Everything has to be viewed as ideal, with the exception of paranirvana, by him who would comprehend that state and acquire a knowledge of how non-ego, voidness, and darkness are 3 in 1, and alone self-existent and perfect. It is absolute, however, only in a relative sense, for it must give room to still further absolute perfection, according to a higher standard of excellence in the following period of activity, just as a perfect flower must cease to be a perfect flower and die, in order to grow into a perfect fruit, if such a mode of expression may be permitted. The Secret Doctrine teaches the progressive development of everything, worlds as well as atoms, and this stupendous development has neither conceivable beginning nor imaginable end. Our universe is only one of an infinite number of universes, all of them sons of necessity, because links in the great cosmic chain of universes, each one standing in the relation of an effect as regards its predecessor, and of a cause as regards its successor. The appearance and disappearance of the universe are pictured as an outbreathing and inbreathing of the great breath which is eternal, and which, being motion, is one of the 3 symbols of the absolute abstract, space and duration being the other 2. When the great breath is projected, it is called the divine breath, and is regarded as the breathing of the unknowable deity, the one existence which breathes out a thought, as it were, which becomes the cosmos. So also is it that, when the divine breath is inspired, the universe disappears into the bosom of the Great Mother, who then sleeps wrapped in her ever-invisible robes. By that which is, and yet is not as meant the great breath itself, which we can only speak of as absolute existence, but cannot picture to our imagination as any form of existence that we can distinguish from non-existence. The three periods, the present, the past and the future, are in esoteric philosophy a compound time, for the three are a composite number only in relation to the phenomenal plane, but in the realm of noumena have no abstract validity. As said in the scriptures, the past time is the present time, as also the future, which, though it has not come into existence, still is, according to a precept in the Prasanga Madhyamaka teaching, whose dogmas have been known ever since it broke away from the purely esoteric schools. Our ideas, in short, on duration and time are all derived from our sensations according to the laws of association. Inextricably bound up with the relativity of human knowledge, they nevertheless can have no existence except in the experience of the individual ego, and perish when its evolutionary march dispels the maya of phenomenal existence. What is time, for instance, but the panoramic succession of our states of consciousness? In the words of a master, I feel irritated at having to use these three clumsy words: past, present, and future, miserable concepts of the objective phases of the subjective whole. They are about as ill-adapted for the purpose as an axe for fine carving. One has to acquire paramartha lest one should become too easy a prey to samvriti is a philosophical axiom. The causes of existence had been done away with. The visible that was, and the invisible that is, rested in eternal non-being. The one being the causes of existence mean not only the physical causes known to science, but the metaphysical causes, the chief of which is the desire to exist, an outcome of nidana and maya. This desire for a sentient life shows itself in everything, from an atom to a sun, and as a reflection of the divine thought propelled into objective existence, into a law, that the universe should exist. According to esoteric teaching, the real cause of that supposed desire, and of all existence, remains forever hidden, and its first emanations are the most complete abstractions mind can conceive. These abstractions must of necessity be postulated as the cause of the material universe which presents itself to the senses and intellect, and must underlie the secondary and subordinate powers of nature, which have been anthropomorphized and worshipped as God and gods by the common herd of every age. It is impossible to conceive anything without a cause. The attempt to do so makes the mind a blank. This is virtually the condition to which the mind must come at last, when we try to trace back the chain of causes and effects. But both science and religion jump to this condition of blankness much more quickly than is necessary, for they ignore the metaphysical abstractions which are the only conceivable causes of physical concretions. These abstractions become more and more concrete as they approach our plane of existence, until finally they phenomenalize in the form of the material universe, by a process of conversion of metaphysics into physics, analogous to that by which steam can be condensed into water, and water frozen into ice. The idea of eternal non-being, which is the one being, will appear a paradox to anyone who does not remember that we limit our ideas of being to our present consciousness of existence, making it a specific, instead of a generic term. An unborn infant, could it think in our acceptation of that term, would necessarily in a similar manner limit its conception of being to the intrauterine life which alone it knows. And were it to endeavor to express to its consciousness the idea of life after birth, death to it, it would, in the absence of data to go upon, and of faculties to comprehend such data, probably express that life as non-being which is real being. In our case the one being is the noumenon of all the noumena which we know must underlie phenomena, and give them whatever shadow of reality they possess, but which we have not the senses or the intellect to cognize at present. The impalpable atoms of gold scattered through the substance of a ton of auriferous quartz may be imperceptible to the naked eye of the miner, yet he knows that they are not only present there, but that they alone give his quartz any appreciable value. And this relation of the gold to the quartz may faintly shadow forth that of the noumenon to the phenomenon. Only the miner knows what the gold will look like when extracted from the quartz, whereas the common mortal can form no conception of the reality of things separated from the Maya which veils them, and in which they are hidden. Alone the initiate, rich with the lore acquired by numberless generations of his predecessors, directs the eye of Dangma toward the essence of things on which no Maya can have any influence. It is here that the teachings of esoteric philosophy in relation to the Nidanas and the Four Truths become of the greatest importance, but they are secret. Alone, the one form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all-presence, which is sensed by the opened eye of Dangma. The tendency of modern thought is to recur to the archaic idea of a homogeneous basis for apparently widely different things. Heterogeneity developed from homogeneity. Biologists are now searching for their homogeneous protoplasm and chemists for their protyle, while science is looking for the force of which electricity, magnetism, heat, and so forth are the differentiations. The Secret Doctrine carries this idea into the region of metaphysics and postulates a one form of existence as the basis and source of all things. But perhaps the phrase, the one form of existence, is not altogether correct. The Sanskrit word is prahavapyaya, the place or rather plane whence is the origination, and into which is the resolution of all things, as a commentator says. It is not the mother of the world, as translated by Wilson, for jagged yoni, as shown by Fitzedward Hull, is scarcely so much the mother of the world, or the womb of the world, as the material cause of the world. The Puranic commentators explain it by Karana, cause, but esoteric philosophy, by the ideal spirit of that cause. In its secondary stage, it is the svabhavit of the Buddhist philosopher, the eternal cause and effect, omnipresent yet abstract, the self-existent plastic essence and the root of all things, viewed in the same dual light as the Vedantin views his Parabrahman page 078 and Mulaprakriti, the one under two aspects. It seems indeed extraordinary to find great scholars speculating on the possibility of the Vedanta, and the Uttara Mimamsa especially, having been evoked by the teachings of the Buddhists, whereas, on the contrary, it is Buddhism, the teaching of Gautama Buddha, that was evoked and entirely upreared on the tenets of the Secret Doctrine, of which a partial sketch is here attempted, and on which, also, the Upanishads are made to rest. According to the teachings of Sri Shankaracharya, our contention is undeniable. Dreamless sleep is one of the 7 states of consciousness known in Oriental esotericism. In each of these states a different portion of the mind comes into action. Or as a Vedantin would express it, the individual is conscious in a different plane of his being. The term dreamless sleep, in this case, is applied allegorically to the universe, to express a condition somewhat analogous to that state of consciousness in man, which, not being remembered in a waking state, seems a blank, just as the sleep of the mesmerized subject seems to him an unconscious blank when he returns to his normal condition, although he has been talking and acting as a conscious individual would. But where was Dangma when the alaya of the universe was in Paramartha and the great wheel was in Upadaka? Here we have before us the subject of centuries of scholastic disputations. The two terms alaya and Paramartha have been the causes of dividing schools and splitting the truth into more different aspects than any other mystic words. Alaya is the soul of the world, or Anima Mundi, the oversoul of Emerson, which according to esoteric teaching, changes its nature periodically. Alaya, though eternal and changeless in its inner essence on the planes which are unreachable by either men or cosmic gods, Dhyani Buddhas, changes during the active life period with respect to the lower planes, ours included. During that time, not only the Dhyani Buddhas are one with Alaya in soul and essence, but even the man strong in yoga, mystic meditation, is able to merge his soul with it, as Arya Sangha, of the Yogacharya school, says. This is not nirvana, but a condition next to it. Hence the disagreement. Thus, while the Yogacharyas of the Mahayana school say that Alaya, Ningpo and Sang in Tibetan, is the personification of the voidness, and yet Alaya is the basis of every visible and invisible thing, and that, though it is eternal and immutable in its essence, it reflects itself in every object of the universe like the moon in clear tranquil water. Other schools dispute the statement. The same for Paramartha. The Yogacharyas interpret the term as that which is also dependent upon other things, Paratantra. And the Madhyamikas say that Paramartha is limited to Paranishpana, or absolute perfection, i.e., in the exposition of these two truths of the four, the former believe and maintain that, on this plane, at any rate, there exists only some Vriddhasatya, or relative truth, and the latter teach the existence of Paramartha Satya, absolute truth. No Arat, O mendicants, can reach absolute knowledge before he becomes one with Paranirvana. Parikalpita and Paratantra are his two great enemies. Parikalpita, in Tibetan Kuntag, is error, made by those unable to realize the emptiness and illusionary nature of all, who believe something to exist which does not, e.g., the non-ego. And Paratantra is that, whatever it is, which exists only through a dependent or causal connection, and which has to disappear as soon as the cause from which it proceeds is removed, e.g., the flame of a wick. Destroy or extinguish it, and light disappears. Esoteric philosophy teaches that everything lives and is conscious, but not that all life and consciousness are similar to those of human, or even animal beings. Life we look upon as the one form of page 080 existence, manifesting in what is called matter, or what, incorrectly separating them, we name spirit, soul, and matter in man. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of soul on this plane of existence, and soul is the vehicle on a higher plane for the manifestation of spirit, and these three are a trinity synthesized by life, which pervades them all. The idea of universal life is one of those ancient conceptions which are returning to the human mind in this century as a consequence of its liberation from anthropomorphic theology. Science, it is true, contents itself with tracing or postulating the signs of universal life, but has not yet been bold enough to even whisper Anima Mundi. The idea of crystalline life, now familiar to science, would have been scouted half a century ago. Botanists are now searching for the nerves of plants. Not that they suppose that plants can feel or think as animals do, but because they believe that some structure, bearing the same relation functionally to plant life that nerves bear to animal life, is necessary to explain vegetable growth and nutrition. It seems hardly possible that science, by the mere use of terms such as force and energy, can disguise from itself much longer the fact that things that have life are living things, whether they be atoms or planets. But what is the belief of the inner esoteric schools, the reader may ask. What are the doctrines taught on this subject by the esoteric Buddhists? With them, we answer, Alaya has a double, and even a threefold meaning. In the Yogacharya system of the contemplative Mahayana school, Alaya is both the universal soul, Anima Mundi, and the self of a progressed adept. He who is strong in the yoga can introduce at will his alaya by means of meditation into the true nature of existence. The alaya has an absolute eternal existence, says Aryasanga, the rival of Nagarjuna. In one sense it is pradhana, which is explained in Vishnu Purana as that which is the unevolved cause, is emphatically called, by the most eminent sages, pradhana, original base, which is subtle prakriti, viz. That which is eternal, and which at once is, or comprehends what is, and what is not, or is mere process. The indiscrete cause which is uniform, and both cause and effect, and which those who are acquainted with first principles call pradhana and prakriti, is the incognizable Brahma who was before all. Brahma does not put forth evolution itself or create, but only exhibits various aspects of itself, one of which is prakriti, an aspect of pradhana. Prakriti, however, is an incorrect word, and alaya would explain it better, for prakriti is not the uncognizable Brahma. It is a mistake of those who know nothing of the universality of the occult doctrines from the very cradle of the human races, and especially so of those scholars who reject the very idea of a primordial revelation, to teach that the anima mundi, the one life or universal soul, was made known only by Anaxagoras, or during his age. This philosopher brought the teaching forward simply to oppose the two materialistic conceptions of Democritus on cosmogony, based on the exoteric theory of blindly driven atoms. Anaxagoras of Clazomenae, however, was not its inventor, but only its propagator, as was also Plato. That which he called mundane intelligence, nausea, the principle that according to his views is absolutely separated and free from matter and acts with design, was called motion, the one life, or Jivatma, in India, ages before the year 500 BC. Only the Aryan philosophers never endowed this principle, which with them is infinite, with the finite attribute of thinking. This leads naturally to the supreme spirit of Hegel and the German transcendentalists, a contrast that it may be useful to point out. The schools of Schelling and Fichte have diverged widely from the primitive archaic conception of an absolute principle and have mirrored an aspect only of the basic idea of the Vedanta. Even the absoluter Geist shadowed forth by von Hartmann in his pessimistic philosophy of the unconscious, while it is, perhaps, the closest approximation made by European speculation to the Hindu Advaitin doctrines, yet similarly falls far short of the reality. According to Hegel, the unconscious would never have undertaken the vast and laborious task of evolving the universe, except in the hope of attaining clear self-consciousness. In this connection it is to be borne in mind that in designating spirit, a term which the European pantheists use as equivalent to parabrahman, as unconscious, they do not attach to the expression the connotation it usually bears. It is employed in the absence of a better term to symbolize a profound mystery. The absolute consciousness behind phenomena, they tell us, which is only termed unconsciousness in the absence of any element of personality, transcends human conception. Man, unable to form a single concept except in terms of empirical phenomena, is powerless from the very constitution of his being to raise the veil that shrouds the majesty of the Absolute. Only the liberated spirit is able to faintly realize the nature of the source whence it sprung, and whither it must eventually return. As the highest Dayan Chohan, however, can but bow in ignorance before the awful mystery of absolute being, and since, even in that culmination of conscious existence, the merging of the individual in the universal consciousness, to use a phrase of Fichte's, the finite cannot conceive the infinite, nor can it apply to it its own standard of mental experiences. How can it be said that the unconscious and the absolute can have even an instinctive impulse or hope of attaining clear self-consciousness? A Vedantin, moreover, would never admit this Hegelian idea. and the occultist would say that it applies perfectly to the awakened Mahad, the universal mind already projected into the phenomenal world as the first aspect of the changeless absolute, but never to the latter. Spirit and matter, or Purusha and Prakriti, are but the two primeval aspects of the one and secondless, we are taught. The matter-moving nous, the animating soul, immanent in every atom, manifested in man, latent in the stone, has different degrees of power, and this pantheistic idea of a general spirit soul pervading all nature is the oldest of all the philosophical notions. Nor was the Archias a discovery either of Paracelsus or of his pupil Van Helmont, for this same Archias is father either, the manifested basis and source of the innumerable phenomena of life localized. The whole series of the numberless speculations of this kind are but variations on the same theme, the keynote of which was struck in this primeval revelation. The term Anupadaka, parentless, or without progenitors, is a mystical designation having several meanings in our philosophy. By this name celestial beings, the Dayan Chohins or Dhyani Buddhas, are generally meant. These correspond mystically to the human Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, known as the Manushi, human, Buddhas, which latter are also designated Anupadaka, once that their whole personality is merged in their compound 6th and 7th principles, page 083 or Atma Buddhi, and they have become the diamond-souled, Vajrasattva's or full Mahatmas. The concealed Lord, sang by Dag Po, the one merged with the Absolute, can have no parents, since he is self-existent, and one with the universal spirit, Svayambhu, the Svabhavat in its highest aspect. The mystery of the hierarchy of the Anupadaka is great, its apex being the universal spirit soul, and the lower rung the Manushi Buddha, and even every soul-endowed man also is an Anupadaka in a latent state. Hence, when speaking of the universe in its formless, eternal, or absolute condition, before it was fashioned by the builders, the expression, the great wheel universe, was Anupadaka. And that's not all. Our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.